Creating a digital portfolio can be a really straightforward thing to do and quite a useful thing to understand how to make, particularly when you graduate and you need to email maybe a gallery, work that you've been doing, or a potential buyer. It's a really valuable thing to think, how do I capture all of my visual images in one place and make it small enough to be able to email to someone? It's also a really affordable way of creating exhibition catalogues. Rather than incurring massive printing fees, you can design the brochure any way you want, and then again email it to a whole potential bunch of buyers, gallerists, etc. One of the easiest mechanisms, bits of software to use, is PowerPoint. So I'm just going to open PowerPoint for the moment. All of you have access to Microsoft Office, so this is a very straightforward piece of software, and you've probably used PowerPoint in various different forms over the years. What I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a blank presentation and I'm going to create a new document. So obviously PowerPoint is designed for presentations. So I'm just going to start by thinking about my first page. So I'm going to type in a title here. Now for you it might be your name, it might be your module title. So you can call this obviously what you want. Now we want to create some new slides. Now there's a difference between using PowerPoint on a PC to PowerPoint on a Mac. On a PC this is much easier because what you can do is you can go to the insert function, and what will come up under this is not just a picture from a file, but you can actually insert a whole photo album, and in one click you've pretty much made your digital portfolio. Unfortunately, that option isn't available to Mac users. You can create an automate function that will automatically paste pictures into your document, but that in itself is a bit of a faff. So what I'm going to do is instead I'm going to go to New Slide, and I'm going to choose from the various different options that I've got. And normally what I prefer to do is just choose a blank slide. I'm now just going to hit New Slide a few times. So let's just start with maybe 10 individual slides. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to open up the images that I've got on my desktop. Now I've got a folder here with a whole series of recent paintings, and some of those have already been cropped down, but there's a couple on here that haven't been cropped. So I'm just scrolling through them for the moment. There might be a few duplicates as well. There's one there. I'm just going to click Command and O to open that document. This is on a Mac. So this is obviously a painting which has been photographed in my studio at the moment. We've got some edges either side, and if I click and drag over that, I create a rectangular selection. And if I just hit Command and K, that's a quick crop. You can see I could probably crop that a little bit more. Of course I could put these images in Photoshop and crop them that way, but if you don't have Photoshop and you've got the preview function in your Mac, this is the simple way of doing it. If I click down there, these are the images that are most likely to need cropping. If I open that one up, I'm just going to click again and drag over that to crop that image down. Now let's say, for argument's sake, you had an image that was the wrong way round. So let's just take this image and we'll open this up. If you press Command and L, you rotate your image to the left. If you press Command and R, then you rotate it to the right. So that's a very simple way of correcting it. Again, I'm just going to click and drag over the images. I'm going to point out at this point in time that all of these photographs were taken on my phone, and they were photographed in normal light conditions. Sometimes an overcast day is a really good space to take photographs of your work, because you don't tend to get hot spots and you've got fairly even illumination. This was photographed just outside in my garden, propped up. Do be mindful obviously of surface. If you've got objects, you might want to think about what's behind the objects. You might potentially want to think about putting a piece of paper behind the object, maybe using an Anglepoise lamp to light objects. You might want to think about natural lighting or the space the object occupies, but also do be mindful of the direction of the light source. Particularly if you've been working in painting, then light sources can be reflected, and if you're using flash, that can also be the case. So I'm just going to crop those images down. You can see up the top here there's a little bit of reflection from the daylight situation. If you are photographing something very, very shiny, or if you're photographing something behind glass, then having a large piece of black fabric in front of the painting with a small aperture for your camera to sit through will usually solve that problem. So I'm just basically looking at my images first of all, happy with that set of images, and I'm now going to paste these into my PowerPoint document. So I'm just literally going to click on the first one, hold the Shift key down, and then scroll down. Now I've got my PowerPoint document open. I've selected about 10 images, so I'm just going to drag those straight forward to the desktop. And you drag them to this section, not to this section. If you try to drag them down this pane, they won't paste in. So if I now select that image, cut that image, so Command X, go to the next page and paste, go back to the original page, click on the next one. So as I say, the PC version will automatically do this for you, so it does save you a considerable amount of time. But we'll look at other bits of software as well that we can use. I'm just going to add some new slides. Come back to the starting point. Sometimes if you want to and you find that you're reaching back a long way, it's useful just to move that slide to where you've got some more empty spaces. And then I'll just continue to paste those. And as I've just trimmed that and there's no other image there, I'll just put it back to where it was. So I could now put some more images in. So I'll come to this point and I'll add some new slides again. So when you add a new slide, usually it's remembering the format that you've already chosen. So if I click on the next selection, and do the same thing. What does happen with PowerPoint is that it kind of recognises when you've placed an image in the middle. So if you placed that image in here and you bring that up to PowerPoint, can you see you get these little cross lines that says, yes, that image is in the middle of the page. Of course, you might prefer to place your image over the side. Once you paste these images in, you could also, if you wanted to, resize them. So it's very simple to resize an image. And if you have put an image into your PowerPoint presentation the wrong way around, in other words, it's on its side, it's very simple to see this symbol up here, click, and you can just rotate that around. I'm just going to go Command and unZ and undo, just sort of step it back by pressing Command and Z a few times to return it back to where it was. Before I'm happy that I've now pasted those images in. And I'm going to add some new slides. Get my next lot of images. So you can see that that automated function in a PC would have saved, will save everybody at least sort of 10 minutes worth or 15 minutes worth of time, depending on how many images you're placing into your presentation. What I'm trying to show you really is that you can put a lot of pictures into your PowerPoint presentation, and it's quite straightforward to make them the size that you want to make them. In other words, make the file format the right size to be able to email to someone. And we'll put hopefully the last few in. Of course, if you put an image into your presentation and didn't crop it in the first instance, again, it's a real straightforward matter to crop an image. Simply double click on the photograph and you'll see the crop function come up, and then you can obviously reformat the image in that way. There's the crop marks. You can obviously pull this down to crop it in if you want to. So if you do have extraneous information in your photograph, it's really straightforward to sort that out. Okay, so what we've so far done is kind of blanketly put in these images. What we'd like to do now is to organise these images. So we've got a very simple way of doing that. If you look down the bottom here, we've got this preview option. And if we click on that, it says slide sorter. We can also go view and find slide sorter up here, but I'm just going to go down the bottom here. And what we can now see is all the images in this presentation. So it's really straightforward now to select your images and just simply move them to where you want them to be in your presentation. So you can start to think here about the sort of visual rhyming of one image against another. It's always a good idea when you're creating a digital portfolio to keep the original photographs in your PowerPoint document and keep your PowerPoint as a PowerPoint. That way that if you need to use those images again, or maybe reconfigure those images to create a different portfolio, you've always got that original starting point. So I'm sort of thinking here about kind of colour relationships as also sort of thematic relationships as well. I might also be organising the work in terms of time. So what was the first image that I made, what was the last image I made, etc. So that I'm creating a kind of visual narrative with the images. Any slides, you can just click on the slide and press the return key, not the return key, the backspace key, and that would delete your image. You can also see I've got a couple of versions of the same painting. It might be because I've pasted either the same image in twice, or it might be that I've got a different version of the painting, maybe a painting in an earlier state. So this painting here subsequently went on to become a different painting. It was reworked. So that one ended up becoming this one. So I obviously don't want that one in the presentation now. If I double click on an image, I'm going to return it back to its full scale. So I'll just take it back here now to the slide sorter to get it in order. Now that I've got my images into my PowerPoint presentation, I might want to add some other things. For instance, it might be really useful to know how big that particular painting is. Well, that's really straightforward. I can just add a text box and I can type in title, dimensions, maybe media. Obviously, if I then decide, well, that is going to be called, and it's this dimension, and it's acrylic on board. If I now position that where I want it to appear, I might, for instance, decide, well, I don't like this font. I might wish to change the font on my presentation. I might change that to bold just to make the title stand out, and of course I could change the colour of the text as well. And if I then click on that box and copy it, if I then go to my next slide, I can just paste that in. And obviously if I've got a whole series of images which are the same size, that's really straightforward. Of course I might need to change the titles for each one, but I can quickly do that. Now I might feel that a white background to my image is not something that I want to do. So I can change the format of the background, and I can choose to have maybe, for instance, a grey background. And if I click on that button, then I've now made all of the slides have that grey background. You can play around with all the sort of configurations of what you want your presentation to be like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save that now. And then obviously initially when I save something, it's asking me where I'm going to save this to. So this is going to be created as a PowerPoint presentation on my desktop, and I'm going to hit save. I'm now going to close that down for the moment and close this box down. And we're going to look at that presentation. I'm going to hit Command and I, and that tells me at the moment this presentation is 18.2 megabytes in size, which would be absolutely fine to submit onto Turnitin, but it would be far too large really for an email. I'm now opening the presentation again, and I'm going to double click on one image. And what happens is we now get this symbol. This symbol up here, if you hover over it, says compress pictures. As I click on this, I can now choose which option I want. Well, my presentation only needs to be screen resolution size if this presentation is going to be seen on a computer. Again, if I'm uploading it to Student Central. So I'm just going to click OK, and you can see that this is going to compress all the photographs in the whole file. It will take a few seconds to do that. If I now close the box again and save it, if I now go to my presentation and click Command and I, you can see I've now got it down to 10.5 megabytes. This again is now big enough for me to email to someone. I'm going to double click on it again, and this time I'm going to save as. And as I go to save as, rather than saving it as a PowerPoint presentation, I'm now going to save it as a PDF. And I'm now going to export it. If I look at the PDF document obviously means that I can email that to anybody, and the person doesn't have to necessarily have PowerPoint to be able to open this. If I click on that and hit Command and I, you can see that it's not changed a great deal in terms of its size. If I click on the image, obviously it opens in a slightly different way, but the quality of the images is the same. This is opened in Acrobat Pro. You've all got access to Acrobat Pro. So if I now go File, Save as Other, and I go Reduced Size PDF, and I want to go for the highest option that I've got on here, so Acrobat 10 and later, click OK. I'm going to save it at the same title. This will replace the one I've just made. And obviously, depending on how many images we've got in the presentation, this part of the process will take longer. Once that's done, if I now click on that new document and press Command 9, you can see I've now got this massive document down to 4.8 megabytes. Now that's ready to email to someone that we want to email it to, or indeed upload it to Turnitin. If I double click on that compressed file, you can see that there's no visible difference in terms of image quality because we've made it fit for the screen. If I was to actually open that folder up and I clicked on each individual image, you could see that each image in itself would have added up. I mean, this one photograph there is over a megabyte. So with all of those individual photographs being larger quite often than 1 megabyte, that would have been a really massive file and would have struggled to be uploaded. But that's a very simple way of creating a digital portfolio using PowerPoint.